Good. Welcome to Unlocked, the home of common sense that speaks Britain's language. Today is episode 3 of Brexit Unlocked, and we have a superb Eurosceptic special. With key political players from Europe's anti-EU parties, today's guests are truly our friends in Europe. And Belinda, this show is going to be an absolute corker. The trailer has already completely triggered the Remainers.
I've seen. In the next hour, our guests will shine a light on the inspirational pro-democracy movements that are sweeping across the continent and expose the dark underbelly of the beast that the EU does not want you to hear. Believe the mainstream media and you'd think it was only the UK that had grave concerns about the EU project. But the truth is, Euroscepticism across Europe has doubled in the past 20 years.
Well, 2 recent events have really turbocharged Euroscepticism. First, of course, was Brexit. And next, the EU's calamitous mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's look at the scores on the doors. The bookies' odds as we go to press. Who will be the next country to leave? Well, Italy. Italexit. Quitaly are the bookies' favourites in the UK at 7-2. Greece are second favourites at 8-1. France is 10-1 and Holland is 33-1. Bit of a long shot. Let's see what our Dutch guest has to say about that. So those are the scores on the doors. Our first guest today is Alexandra Phillips, who is my joint favourite Brexit blonde bombshell.
That's very safe.
Hi, Alex. That's a safe. I didn't flip around the ear there, did I?
No, I know. Alex has lived in Brussels for many years, core Brexiteer, former Brexit Party MEP. She's been amazing taking part in Frexit this week. She's like the bridge between Britain and France at the moment. Alex, welcome.
Hello, nice to see you guys again. It's like the good old days of Brexbox.
So true. So true. Yeah. So what is your feeling about the mood on the ground in terms of Euroscepticism, in terms of your experience as well in the EU Parliament, Alex?
Look, well, I think we all know as MEPs that they create cordon sanitaires and many devices to keep Eurosceptic voices repressed. And, you know, they do this in a very technical way by making sure that there are no appointments to senior positions on committees. Leading appointments are all stitched up behind closed doors, behind the main groups. And actually, for the first time in the most recent European elections in which we were elected, shortly before we valiantly became unemployed, we actually saw a group form for the very first time with Euroscepticism at its core, the ID group, Identity and Democracy. So that's actually, it resembles there's been a big leap forward. And I think what we're seeing now, precipitating from that, other movements happening in member states, copying what the Brexit Party did actually, and saying we need to start having this discussion. You know, I think in a lot of countries, especially Eurozone countries, there's been a lot of fear about actually leaving the EU because leaving a single currency is so much more mechanically difficult and complex. And I think some of the main parties there have toyed with Euroscepticism a little bit, but not really in the same way that we have in the UK. But these movements are now starting to emerge and actually putting a real discussion about European Union membership on the map in those countries and back in the headlines, which is a good thing. But I'm sure all eyes from continental Europe are going to be on the negotiations here in Britain and seeing how we fare as part of the process of leaving the EU, the sort of deal we have, or whether it's a no deal, and how punitive and malevolent really that the EU is prepared to be against us, and about member states trying quite correctly to become self-determining nations again.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the story was always the Brexit Party were isolated, the UK stood alone in its Euroscepticism. But you remember the final speech when, after we voted for Boris Johnson's deal to go through, we got a standing ovation from other Eurosceptic MEPs, including Roos, our guest in a bit. And that I thought was a beautiful moment. And what I think that the purpose of today's show is to let Brexiteers know that they're not alone. There is this Eurosceptic sentiment across the bloc. And also, we want to give support to those other MEPs and those other movements that are still fighting today. Like, we're all in this together, right? That's the feeling, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, actually, once again, without sort of becoming a sort of hardline patriotic nationalist, Britain is leading the way. We're pioneering something and saying to the world and saying to our friends in continental Europe, you can do this. Don't be scared. You can get your country's freedom. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And do you know what's so sad? We know what the atmosphere was like. In the European Parliament, for those who don't know, they sit everybody within groups in a block going round a hemicycle from, let's say, the very far left all the way around to the very far right. And it's sort of every shade in the middle. And we found ourselves sitting, we weren't part of a group, but behind the Eurosceptic bloc. And the speeches that were made about Brexit in support of our efforts and that camaraderie that we experienced was truly excellent. But those pictures and those speeches are never broadcast and people don't get to see them. So I think people don't actually realise that there is a consolidated and cooperative movement already existing in the European Parliament. Yes, we weren't formally a part of it, but we did have strong allies there. And I think it's good that we've set an agenda. And as those people who are the trailblazers in fighting for freedom, and soon, hopefully, we're going to get it in about 98 days' time, then, you know, we've set that agenda. And I think it's only right that we help those following in our footsteps to do the same.
Yes, absolutely. Solidarity is what I say. We even when we left, I remember the last day we had, I think it was the 29th of January, our European friends in the Parliament, you know, they're like, don't desert us. When you've left, please, you know, stand by us and let's stick together as a massive European democratic movement from the UK to France to Germany and it's full of moderates. We kept getting depicted as far right, far left, xenophobes, you know, the 1930s, the Nazis were always brought up. We were called fascists in the EU Parliament, weren't we? And many of our European friends have experienced the same sort of insults, the same demonization, and it's never brought up. It's never, that struggle we all shared is just never brought up on mainstream media.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to our guests from various other member states in this show about the hostility within their countries, because we had it hard from the media, from the general reaction on the streets. But Alex, let's turn now to Brexit and where we're at, to give viewers a quick update. Where do you think we're going? Are we going towards the glorious clean break that we desire, or do you think the knees might wobble?
There's not going to be a clean break. Of that, I'm absolutely sure. I mean, if there is, that's because the clock will have been run down because the EU are getting bogged down in process. If rumours are to be believed, actually what's going on right here is the governments, I think, are going to capitulate to a short-termist agenda, use the umbrella of COVID chaos to essentially get themselves off the hook and actually play into those fear narratives that we're hearing and actually get one foot out and then and sort of use that as a landing post, really, to then continue with a long-term strategy. But my fear actually is in the wake of the economic crisis that the pandemic is going to leave and is already, you know, devastating countries' economies. I mean, you just have to look at what's going on in the UK, thousands of jobs being lost every single day. What we need to rebuild our economy, and actually what many countries in Europe are going to need to do, is break away from some of those overarching EU regulations, things such as state aid, things such as competition regulation, and become more dynamic and fleet of foot and be able to create bespoke policies that match their marketplaces, match their international connections, and match what they need to do to basically get their economies up and running again. Because, you know, the European Union should really be a union of nation states, not a federalist superbloc, but everything that it's become actually denies plurality. It denies that independence in being able to make decisions that suit your country. And in a crisis, that's exactly what we need to do. But my fear is actually, like I said, if rumours is to be believed, we're actually a whisker away from some form of deal. They're very clever in the EU at sequencing. And it was very purposeful that they made us leave and make sure that we were ejected, voices who could have, you know, a say on negotiations and have an ear to the ground, make sure that we are ejected and put all this process into what's called the tunnel. So it's far away from public scrutiny. So we're going to end up being presented with the fait accompli without any commentary on it, which in itself invokes sort of outcries of public opinion, which then can steer a government to react and make sure that what they're doing is in line with what people want them to do. But the EU have been extremely clever from the beginning. They've outwitted us, they've outplayed us, they've outsmarted us at every single step, whether we're looking at the weaponization of the Good Friday Agreement, whether we're looking at the sequencing, whether we're looking at the messaging, whether we're looking at conspiring in bad faith with opposition forces in our own parliament to perpetuate a political deadlock so they could strong arm us into essentially putting a withdrawal agreement in place, which every single page favors them and not us. And now, despite in many respects the EU often breaking international treaty themselves, they're working geopolitically, taking advantage of the fact you've got elections going on in America, where the Irish lobby is very powerful at turning out the Irish American votes for the Democrats to even get people the likes of Biden and Pelosi to say there would not be a trade agreement with the UK if we, set about pursuing the internal markets bill, if that follows through its various stages, which essentially rescinds and revokes part of the withdrawal agreements. So frankly, I think our leaders have been extremely naive, and I think that we're in a tricky situation. So I have very little hope that there's going to be a clean break Brexit. What the government should have done is propose that from the outset and spent the last year preparing for that. But instead, what we're hearing is the idea of 7 days worth of backlogs of lorries in Kent, and fishermen don't know whether they're going to be part of quotas or not. We have no idea what the shape of Brexit is going to be, because the government have been strategically weak, had no foresight, no conviction, and allowed our country essentially to be a political football and be treated like flotsam and jetsam by Brussels.
I think it's also a reflection of the Tory party and how divided that party is. I think the British public saw very clearly from the beginning the kind of tactics being used, and we were amazed at how our government played it. And after May and her negotiating tactics, I think we all knew that there were forces working against us, not just in the EU, outside of the EU, to keep us under EU jurisdiction. But I'm really impressed the public never believed it. We always stayed true to the message, which was clean break or no Brexit. A good deal is unlikely.
What was really interesting as well, speaking to Eurosceptic friends within Brussels and Strasbourg, was very much the feeling that other countries are very, very closely watching what's going on with us. And if Brexit is a success, i.e. for Britain, then they're going to start getting much more enamoured with the idea of severing ties too. So they were always going to kick us in the backside on the way out, right, Alex?
Yeah, but also I think what a lot of people aren't talking about is the impact Brexit's going to have the other side of the channel. We keep hearing it's going to be a disaster for us and all the implications and ramifications of a no-deal Brexit for the UK, but we don't hear about how that's going to affect the economies and the countries the other side of the channel. And it's not just about trade. Let's remember that we actually run a trade deficit with the EU, so we actually import a lot more from them than we export to them. So any sort of hold up in the passage of goods into the UK is going to affect manufacturers, suppliers and producers the other side of the channel. But there's also major implications for the funding of the EU itself. We find very often that Eurosceptic countries like Poland have actually shielded behind Britain being a strong voice at that table to push back against the ever federalizing agenda of Brussels. Now that voice is gone, it's going to be so much easier for the powers that be, the von der Leyens, the Charles Michel, the David Sassolis, to actually browbeat and bully especially the smaller countries. But not just that, you have to look at the financing. The EU is about to enter its own big economic crisis. It's got no way of really doing a form of quantitative easing to make sure that economically the bloc and the Eurozone can dig itself out of an economic mess. So you've got various countries all running at different speeds inside the same currency, and not much political will to cooperate or correspond. But then if you look back at the table that all those mouths are sitting around needing to be fed, the UK contribution into the European project itself was equivalent to that of 16 member states. You've now got a situation with the European Union with about 3 net contributors, and they want to keep expanding. They want to build their empire. They've got various other Balkan states. Even Turkey is still on a pre-accession list. And it's just becoming a fanatical, obsessive, ambitious project that I hope actually will run itself into the ground. But I hope actually that our fellows in places like Italy and France manage to get out before that happens.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's been quite clear that the EU has wanted the UK to fail in Brexit far more than it's wanted a trade deal, and unfortunately that's, I think, what motors it in the negotiations.
Superb. Well, Alex, as ever, impassioned, forthright, bang on the money, beautiful. Thank you very much. Now, I know you spoke at the launch of the Frexit campaign this week as well, and that leads us seamlessly into our next guest. I know you've got to go up to LBC Radio now. Good luck with that, darling. We'll speak to you
Talk
again.
radio, talk radio. Get it right. I'll be in trouble if you get that wrong.
Talk Radio, the home of common sense, like a lot. Anyway.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Cheerio. Okay, so seamlessly moving forward, owling into our next guest. Charles-Henri Gallois is the leader of the president of Génération. Frexit, became a great friend of ours when we were MEPs. In fact, joined us in Parliament Square on the 31st of January. I think I remember that.
Yes,
just about.
Barely.
Yeah. A really, really passionate guy who's this week launched the Frexit campaign in France. Hello, sir. Are you there?
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can. We can hear you loud and
clear.
clear.
Perfect.
Tell us, Charles, about the birth of the Frexit movement and what factors in particular in France are driving Euroscepticism?
You know, I mean, if you have looked at all the COVID-19 crisis, as you have told, I think that people are being aware that within the European Union, you don't have any proper sovereignty. The top of the topic now is about all the sanitary plan, all the also food plan, because COVID-19 crisis has shown that we have lost many fields of sovereignty. So people are now aware that France has to take it back. Then you have all this debate in France because people are saying, like Macron, you have to have a European sovereignty, but it doesn't mean anything because, and you know it very well, all the treaties at the level of the European Union level, the aim of the project is to take out sovereignty from the nation states, but not even to give it at a hypothetical European level, because if you look at the European treaties, it's an open area for all the world, not only Europe. So it disarms your countries to fight within globalization. It's the main issue, and I think French people, you had a poll last week, I mean, that French people prefer to have more sovereignty at the national level at 65% than at the European level one. So everything goes in that path. And with Generation Frexit, what do we want to do? Because we know that for Frexit, direct Frexit, maybe to win election on direct Frexit, maybe it's harder because when you are at the presidential election, I mean, European Union is one topic within other ones, within economy, agriculture, and so on. But if we manage to have a proper referendum in France about Frexit, like the ones that you had in the UK, you will have a 6 month, 1 year debate about European Union. And I think with this debate, all the people that will fight to go out, to leave, will be able to give the arguments, and the French people will understand why we need to take back control and why France needs to leave the European Union.
Of course, and Charles-Henri, I also think with an ever-evolving project like the EU, nation states should have referendums anyway once every 5 years, because everything changes so dramatically from when we signed the treaties in the first place. As more centralizations take place, more vetoes go. But tell me, I was reading in the poll that you had that 52% said that they were keen to support a referendum. Are you feeling that on the ground, that more and more people want a say on how much power is taken from your government and given to Brussels?
You're totally right. As you have said, you know, the European Union powers, skills are not the same as in 1957. You know, the first one. And then we enter with the Maastricht Treaty with a new currency. It was in 1992. So it has been 30 years. And after 30 years, normally you should ask people again, do you want still to be part of this project? And actually, the last referendum that we had in France, it was not 1992, it was in 2005. And we have said no.
But no to the constitution.
We have said no. And even with it, it was not a referendum. Sure, it was a referendum. Do we accept this project, this treaty, the European Union as it is? But actually, it was not a yes for leave, but it was a no to the current European Union. And actually, they have never asked to the French people, and even in other countries, they have asked in the UK, but they have never asked to the French people by referendum if they wanted to enter in the European Union. I mean, the Roma Treaty, it was signed by politicians, but the French people were never asked, and we had never a referendum about whether we want to stay or not in the European Union. It was always, do you want more? Do you want more European Union? So it exactly works, you know, as a USSR. In the USSR, when you say, hey, there is some issues, maybe we can talk about it. They say, you're right, camarade, there are issues, but there are issues because we have not gone too far within socialism. With the European Union, it's the same. You say the European Union is not working, and they will answer, it's not working because we need to go further within the European integration. So sure, it's not the same regime and so on, but it's the same way of thinking. And I'm very glad to be here today because we can show to European people that there is Europe without the European Union. Basically, that is what we are doing, and the European people have to be aware of one thing. It's not because you leave that you want to be alone, isolated, all the project fears that they have sold to the British people. Actually, you add European cooperation. That is not the supranational Brussels, but you add European cooperation before the European Union, and you will have European cooperation after the European Union. And basically all the things that are working as international cooperation in Europe, such as Airbus, such as Ariane, it was not done by the European Commission within a supranational state. It was done because head of states such as de Gaulle and the same in the UK wanted to have a project on one specific project where everyone shares the same interest. But at the 21st century, to say for every field, every subject, you have to have this exact same policy, even if you don't share the same interest, it's just a stupid policy.
Okay, Charles, I wanted to get a sense from you. I mean, this whole show is about precisely what you're talking about. European cooperation, coming together to support each other's causes. We hope to be the wind in your sails from over here in the UK. We want to help you on your voice towards independence. I wanted to ask you a question that I asked to all of our guests, actually, and that is, in the United Kingdom, as you know, the mainstream media has been very, very against, on the whole, the idea of leaving the European Union, particularly the BBC and the broadcast media. What's the position like in France? Are you demonized as well by your media?
In France, it's worse. No, it's worse because at least in the UK, that's right. The let's say the biggest mainstream media, such as BBC, they were Channel 4, they were against leaving the European Union. But in France, but you had, for example, you had Daily Express, you had the Telegraph, you had some newspapers in favor of Brexit. In France, if you had the same referendum, you could find 2 or 3 magazines that will advocating for Frexit, but all the mainstream media, from television to newspapers, they will do a campaign to remain. So the work will be harder, but then I'm quite hopeful because you can see, and there is like a change in generation. Our name is Generation Frexit, and there is a change of generation. And if you look at the younger generation, they don't look that much at the mainstream media on TV. They are more taking information in internet, and we are quite strong in internet. So I'm quite hopeful on that way. And they always say that in the UK, the young people were against Brexit. It was false because the main part was abstention. For the young people, it was not Remain. But if you look at the French people, if you look at the polls, the more Eurosceptic in France, it's young people.
Well,
so that's quite interesting.
This is what I was going to ask you because it's so interesting. We got derided and branded as gammons and old people who were so out of touch, and it was the young people that were for Remain. And for me, I couldn't quite get my head around it because young people are supposed to be questioning the establishment and not following like lemmings off the cliff, and that's what our young people were being led towards. And I couldn't understand it because when you look across Europe, the Eurosceptic movements appeal to the young. You have a huge following of students and teenagers, and they're embracing the idea of freedom and change and free speech and democracy in a way that I think the young in our country were deprived of that. Maybe it's because of schooling and universities, they're very pro-EU, and so they're churning out young that don't necessarily have the ability for critical thinking as much.
And also in France, surely it's Vive la Révolution. I mean, you're going for it, right? Is the spirit optimistic? Is it positive? And are you convinced you can take this forward and make a good fist of this?
No, we are positive. We are doing, you know, let's say big campaign to get this referendum, and I'm pretty confident. Even if the polls are not giving Frexit winning if we have a referendum tomorrow, but we can remember the 2005 campaign, as we were talking about. 2005 campaign, the first poll, it was 69% for yes. And we had the vote later, 6 months, 7 months later, no had won at 55%. So I think if we have a proper campaign, we will have, you know, some equality in TV shows. That is not the case right now. I think we can definitely change the opinion and goes for Frexit from 30% to 51. I'm sure we can win this.
One of the great things, one of the great learning curves, the 5-star movement in Italy, and then the Brexit Party in the UK, was we went around the mainstream media. We created our own media platforms. We became the news source. When we were inside the European Parliament, we were filming everything. We were causing loads of trouble. We were disruptive. They didn't know how to handle us. And I think one of the great lessons that we can all share as European brothers and sisters and colleagues and friends in battle is let's learn from each other. And let's learn what worked well in countries, share information, share passion, and share that common desire for less EU and more European integration. We are European brothers and sisters. And I hated the idea that we were told all along, you hate Europe. We love Europe. Absolutely love Europe. It's just we don't love the EU.
No, I totally agree about it. I think we can have a great cooperation together, and that's actually my will. And I think you have shown with the Brexit Party campaign during the European election, it was incredible, and even the Leave campaign. I think you have shown the example, and as you have said also, it's we have all interest, the Eurosceptic across Europe. We have the interest that Brexit goes well, because if Brexit goes well, it will give idea to all the European people to leave, and basically that is what Brussels is fearing the most, and that's why they are negotiating that way. You know, they are actually exactly like a mafia or a sect that want to punish the members that want to take his freedom back. And it's the same spirit. It's not rational, because rationally you have to get a good deal with the UK. As Alexandra said, we have a huge commercial trade surplus. So it's not a rational way, but they fear that UK goes well, and it will give some idea to the other one to leave. And
they're absolutely terrified we make a success of it. Look, if they thought Brexit was going to fail, they wouldn't be fighting so hard to keep us under their control. I mean, they're literally, the proof is in the pudding. Charles-Henri, thank you so much for coming on. We absolutely stand in solidarity with you and all the democracy, fraternity, liberty-loving French friends of ours. We stand with you in trying to regain back that power and the wonderful heaviness of your vote at the ballot box that we wanted, and hopefully we'll get. So let us be an example. We're going to fight for the best Brexit and encourage everyone else to take the same step forward.
Yeah, I want to say the very best of British to you, Captain. You know, you're doing inspiring stuff, and let's keep the communication channels open. Okay.
Do you have, by the way, do you have a message for the British people, Charles-Henri, that if you can speak to them, all the people in their homes watching this, if you have a message of solidarity from the Europeans who have always been behind Brexit, always back the UK, and see us as friends and people who want to cooperate as trading nations, as neighbours, do you have a message that we can take to the British people from France?
I would say to them that Michel Barnier is not French, he's a European Union guy, and that you're not alone, and you have many brothers and sisters across Europe. And I was I was glad to be with you to celebrate Brexit. And don't worry, we will still cooperate together, and see you soon.
Fantastic. Tremendous. Thank you so much, Charles-Henri. Goodbye. Take care.
Goodbye.
Isn't it wonderful just to speak to people who share our core beliefs? But I think Brexiteers so often felt quite lonely, felt quite alone, isolated, berated, condemned by the media. Lots of us lost friends and colleagues and all of that stuff. And it's just so wonderful to talk to somebody from France, you know, who cares about democracy and cares about sovereignty, And that's not a xenophobic Little England thing.
Absolutely.
Actually, it's a beautiful core value. Well, okay, let's move swiftly on now to Holland, the next country. Rob, Roos, MEP for the Forum for Democracy Party, somebody I certainly remember giving a standing ovation to on more than one occasion, a beautiful Eurosceptic and lots of common ground with us as Brexiteers. So, Rob, could you tell us about your party? You're only formed in 2016, but by Jove, you're proving to be very popular, aren't you?
Yes, we are a very new political party. It was very necessary because all the parties in the Netherlands were, they found common ground on the big issues. They fight a little bit about the smaller issues, but if it's about the euro, about sovereignty, about well, controlling your own borders, and that kind of things, that there was no choice, and we wanted to give the people a choice. And well, our party is, they don't exist of real politician. Me neither. I don't feel like a politician. I was an entrepreneur, and I had my own business for all my life. I worked for my own risk, my own account, and my own money. But I do this for my children. My generation will survive, but my children really have a problem, and the children from their age. So that's why I decided, it was a coincidence, I met Thierry Baudet, and well, I said, I'm going to help you. And I founded a lot of companies, so I know how to build organizations. And we started, and well, we became last year the biggest political party in the Netherlands. And we gave the people hope. That's our background. And a lot of my colleagues in the party are, yeah, well, they're practical people. They are from the healthcare and also entrepreneurs. They represent really our society.
I think what's so appealing about parties like yours is you are from the people. You weren't born thinking, I'm going to have a career in politics and I'll choose something to believe in. You know, it's very similar to the Brexit Party, and you know, there are other parties out there who are just people who are sitting watching their nation state and their parliament crumble and outsource all their power to Brussels, and no one's saying anything. And there are no one out there is doing anything about it. So we get off our seats and we go and fight. And as you're doing, it's so wonderful having you here, especially from the Netherlands. Can you tell me, what are the concerns you and your fellow countrymen and women have about the EU and its power grabs over nation states?
Yeah, well, that are a lot of things. First of all, migration. We last Wednesday they introduced the rules on migration, the Migration Pact, the new one. And that means that Brussels has the key to everything, like they always do. They say we're going to solve the problem, but it means we take it away from the member states, and the power is going to Brussels. And in the beginning is that it's not always small. Eh? They always give us solutions, but when it's there, they take away the solution, and they put pressure on their own agenda. So that's migration is one thing, and that's 62% of the Dutch people. They want less migration. That's really the majority. The euro, of course, the advantage of the UK was that you had your own currency, and we have the euro, and that's our first aim. That we have to leave the euro, because that's really a problem for the Netherlands. We are one of the net payers, and all the taxpayers' money is flowing from our country to the south and also to the east. Countries like Poland and Hungary. Well, they
receive a lot of the funds.
Yeah, they are blackmailed. Eh? They receive a lot of money, but they have to accept the migration, and that's really difficult. And also, well, countries like Italy, they are. I'm jealous on. The people in the Netherlands have a lot of private debt, and in Italy it isn't the case. Our country has less public debt, but Italy has a lot of public debt and less private debt. But our people are captured in a system. Because of this debt, they have to work and they have to pay. And if you don't have work anymore, then you can't pay your house anymore. And that's different from Italy. But we still have to pay for France, for Spain, for Italy. And well, to me, it's just not fair that the Dutch taxpayers have to pay for the debt in Italy.
Well, I wanted to ask you about a poll that we've seen, which quotes that 55% of the Dutch population want a referendum to leave. Sounds like glorious news.
They want a referendum on the membership of the European Union. Yeah. I think you said that we are on 33. I think somewhere between 30 and 40% people of the Netherlands who want to leave. But they are scared, because the only thing you see in the media is Brexit will fail, and the UK will go in a terrible situation and economic ways, and that is also what the people in the Netherlands see. So but 55%, and that's a figure that is already there for years, want to have a vote on, can we stay or should we go out? And that's well, I think really a message. But what did our government in 2017 when they started? They took away a referendum. So that's something we don't have anymore. So that's really a problem. We have to get back this referendum.
Do you think you will have a referendum? Do you think you'll be allowed one now, or are all referendums banned since Brexit?
Yes, well, we had the same. We had the referendum on the Ukraine, and also in 2005, like France, we voted against the European law. But first, what we have to do is to have a referendum about the euro. That's important. That's the first step. The euro is for us very, well, it's really a problem, and people start seeing that now. They have to pay, and the purchase power is still on the same level as 20, 25 years ago. So that's really a bad thing. And well, also this migration is something that they are seeing. We have also the Green Deal that is coming up, and that's all. Really worse, because that means a central organized economy, well, like they had in the USSR. Don't think it's a very good idea, but taxonomy and that kind of things, more rules, very difficult for the SMEs, the small businesses. It will be much more a problem in the future, and it's common ground now that people start talking about it.
Yeah, and I get worried that they're going to use COVID as an excuse to centralize even more powers away without any consent. I have a question, seeing as you're a sitting member of the European Parliament, you're in the belly of the beast, about your thoughts and your opinion on the EU and its treatment of the UK Brexit during negotiations, the kind of tactics it's using against the UK to try and keep it under its laws. Do you have any inside info as to how the Eurosceptics in Parliament view Barnier's negotiating tactics with the UK?
Well, I don't. I'm not a member in the negotiations. But well, one thing is clear: they don't want the Brexit to succeed. They have an agenda. The European Union is always expanding in everything. In budget, in rules, in member states. And yeah, if Brexit is a success, then it's an example for the other member states. And well, yeah, well, Northern Ireland and it is something that they will use as a whip to confuse.
So Rob, it's clear that Holland is called one of the frugal 4 member states of the EU. You were very firm on the position that the COVID bailout fund, 750 billion euros, you insisted as a nation were loans rather than outright gifts. Surely the sense of the endless money pit that the EU is becoming will be driving Euroscepticism within Holland.
Yes, that was an eye-opener for a lot of people. 67% voted against that. We had a poll about that, and that's a lot of people. And still, our Mr. Rutte, our Prime Minister, agreed with this fund, and it's terrible in different ways, because it's taxpayers' money of the Dutch people, but also it empowers the European Union. It's really a powerful machine, and giving them more money means they are more powerful. We discussed a few minutes ago about the communication, but they are buying NGOs, they are buying institutions, they are buying even journalists to sell the European Union message and to reduce the voice of what they call populists. I call them, I'm not a populist, I'm not a racist, I'm just a realist fighting for the Dutch taxpayers' money. And also for my children, but we have to be silenced. And they use all this money, 750 billion euros. They buy the Poles, they buy the Hungarian, they buy Italy, and it gives them more and more power, and that's scary.
It's so important that this is spoken about, because the EU is always portrayed as this sort of mother who nurtures her children, and peace only exists because of the EU, and yet the mechanics of the EU and how it buys people, how it horse trades behind closed doors to put certain people in power, how it keeps Eurosceptics out of power, how it buys smaller nations and keeps them on a leash economically. No one ever discusses that support for the EU isn't necessarily out of love, it's out of fear. Fear of leaving economically, on an economic leash they have them. And I think that needs to be discussed more. And I think it's really brave of parties like yours to come out in that pro-EU climate and make a stand.
I think it's also, it's a form of enslavement. It's a form of forcing debt upon nations, which fosters dependence, which obviously is the opposite of independence, and you become dedicated to its existence. And it's always struck me as completely unfair the way that they can take Dutch money and buy votes in Italy. It's a disgrace.
Yeah, that's what really is happening now in Italy, but also in Spain. The people are they're receiving a basic income now, and in France, the people in the healthcare industry they get a raise in payment. The people in the healthcare industry in our country don't receive anything because there is no money. That's what our Prime Minister says, but we give it away. It's really, well, it's just not fair. Yeah. We can explain it.
Absolutely, Rob, and really appreciated your support in Parliament when we were there. Do you have a special message for the Brits sitting at home watching this? We'd love for you to be that wonderful bridge between Eurosceptics in the UK and our wonderful European friends. Who share our values of democracy and freedom. What's your message?
Well, first of all, we miss you very much. And I really mean that, because no, the British have a very good way of humor, and now we have only the German humor. But we really miss you, because the Dutch and the UK had a very good relationship, and it was also a good counterpartner for the opposite way for the French German ex, we had a good relationship, and now we have to do it by ourselves. But you are our example. You have to make Brexit a success. And I was at the US Embassy 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to the US ambassador, and I really said, you have to take care that you have a trade deal before before the elections of November 3, because it's very important. If Brexit will succeed, then other countries will follow. The people are scared in the Netherlands because of the message, and you have to show them that it's not the right message. And if you do that, we will join you afterwards.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we're hoping to use this platform for not just us, but for you as well. We hope you come on again, and we'll share this platform with all Eurosceptics across Europe. So at least we have that presence.
Rob Roos, MEP, thank you very, very much for your inspiring words. And we miss you too. We really do. Well, we miss causing trouble and we miss being rabble-rousers, but we do not miss the European Union one bit. Thanks for coming on Brexit Unlocked, and the best of British from all Brexiteers over this side of the channel. Thank you very much. Right. Isn't it so cool? I mean, look, businessmen who are successful in their own right, who aren't career politicians, that'll never catch on.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we want. We want more people who have actually made a success of their lives. They've built businesses. They've turned that success into building teams.
Career politicians and their spin and their polish, they're just not appealing anymore. And like Margaret Thatcher said, you know, when people are given a choice, they choose freedom. So all the people sitting at home that saw their freedom being taken away by stealth through the back door, through the ECJ, they were like, no, not on my watch, because it's about future generations, as Rob said. It's about my children, their children's children. And that's why it's wonderful to come together on this platform so we can stand with each other in this wonderful democracy.
Yeah, and I'm really getting a sense, which has been my instinct, but it's so useful to speak to people on the continent that are right inside the belly of this. My instinct was that Brexit would really, you know, wound the EU. But now I'm thinking the COVID pandemic is really, really testing it to its breaking point because of the financial implications. Europe's on its knees. Every nation is going to be on its knees economically. Unemployment's going to be surging. Why, oh, why, oh, why do people want to give billions of euros to the EU to help other countries when I believe, and I always have, that charity begins at home? Anyway, that's a nice little conduit into today's final guest, if you like, our headline act. Our Rod Stewart performance is Thomas Fazi, the prominent voice of the Italexit movement. I prefer Quitterly.
I think
it's got a nicer ring to it. So we're moving on to Italy now, and I think Italy is an incredibly interesting country, not only because it's the bookie's favourite to be the next to lead the European Union, but the COVID pandemic, I think, has really been a focal point. You were the hardest hit, you were the first hit, and I was absolutely appalled to see that 48 hours into Italy's lockdown, the EU hit you with 8.5 million euros of fines for breaches of tourism in Sardinia. Now, talk about hitting a country when it's down. Yeah. Thomas, how did that go down in Italy? It went down terribly in the UK.
Well, I think, the COVID pandemic definitely tilted people's opinions. It made them see Europe really under a different light. I mean, I think people have been shifting their views about Europe for many years now. Italy has been through almost now a decade-long economic crisis. You could also say a 20-year-long economic crisis, pretty much ever since it entered the euro. So more and more people have been waking up to the fact that this narrative of Italy needing the euro to survive, of needing the EU to survive, of Italy having no chance of making it on its own. On the one hand, you have people that are old enough to remember what Italy was like when it was a sovereign country, up until the end of the 80s. Italy went from being a war-torn country to becoming the fourth, fifth economy in the world over the course of, 30, 40 years. And that was, with our own currency, with our own money. And on the other hand, you've got, you know, younger people, which, you know, have a much more pro-EU outlook, but even they are realizing that the propaganda just doesn't add up. You know, it's enough to look at statistics from around the world, from how other advanced countries are faring, and you know, how Italy has been doing for these past 20 years. I mean, the numbers speak clearly. Italy has been the hardest hit country from Euro membership. You know, after Greece, I would say. Greece lost a quarter of its GDP over the course of a few years. Italy now is about 6-7% GDP, below pre-crisis levels. So, you know, we're still 6-7% GDP below pre-financial crisis levels. We have mass unemployment, mass poverty. So this is a situation we got, we reached, you know, we met the pandemic with. It was an already dramatic situation. And the pandemic just, you know, ripped the country apart. You know, what few defenses the country had left were blown apart. You know, there's, you know, thousands of businesses that have closed since the pandemic started. It's absolutely disastrous. You know, I mean, we're talking about 12-13% GDP drop. It's massive.
Sorry for interrupting you. The £209 million bailout fund, the COVID bailout that Italy received recently, is that buying Italy's loyalty back?
Well, yeah, it's an attempt to do so. Well, first of all, it's 200 billion that Italy has not received. We haven't received a single cent yet, and so that's important. I mean, everyone's talking as if this deal is done and closed, but in fact, this deal has to be approved by every single EU parliament. So we're still miles away from this deal actually being closed. So now it's just hot air. Even if the deal were to be approved, in fact, most of that money would come under the form of loans. So it would be Italy taking on more debt, and the rest of the money, it would be mostly fake grants. Because of course, you know, it would come under the form of grants from the European budget. But of course, you got to net that out with how much money Italy is putting into the budget. And in fact, when you net it out, the actual grants are you know, pretty minor, because Italy is a huge contributor to the European budget. In fact, just to reply to what Mr. Roos was saying earlier, well, Italy isn't really a money taker, because we're a net contributor to the European budget, and have been forever.
Yeah.
So we're talking, you know, very little free money, if you want to call it like that. But the paradox is that we're being asked to take on more debt, more European supranational debt, which Italian citizens will have to pay back. But Italian citizens, Italian politicians will have almost no say about how that money can be spent. So we're taking on debt that we have almost no say over. I mean, I think this is almost unprecedented in history, you know, where you're asking a country to take on all this debt, and, you know, you have to pay it back, but you have no say about how that money is spent. And so this whole recovery fund is not really about, you know, helping economies to recover. It's about binding them even more to the European Union by getting them to take on the supranational, what is effectively a foreign debt. Because, you know, this is debt issued in euros, and this is a crucial point, you know. I mean, when we talk about democracy, I mean, democracy was devalued even for the UK just by being inside the European Union, but at least you had your own currency. It's really important to understand the importance of the relationship between currency and democracy. It was Wynne Godley, a British economist, who in the early 1990s, when even the UK was debating whether to enter the euro or not, he wrote a great article basically explaining why the UK shouldn't enter the euro. And in few words, he explains, look, controlling the currency, controlling your money is a central plank of democracy. If you lose control of money, you essentially become a colony of whoever controls the money, in this case, the ECB. And so really, I mean, I would say, you know, Italy has fared economically much worse than other countries, and, you know, for a number of reasons, but the democratic problem affects everyone. And I think this is a crucial point. I mean, I would say that for countries that are part of the euro, you can't really even talk about democracy anymore.
And is it impossible for them to leave? Like,
sorry?
In your opinion, nation states that have the euro, how hard is it if they had a referendum to leave? Do you think it's actually going to be impossible? Are they chained forever because of their currency and the defence army, all the ways that are used to motor integration sort of through the back door? What chances are there, if you had a referendum, that Italy could actually follow through and leave economically?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't lie to ourselves. I mean, it wouldn't be easy, but, you know, everything is possible if there's political will. Monetary unions have broken up in the past. It wouldn't be the first time, you know. We gave up a currency. We all gave up the currencies we had to take on a new currency. So saying that you couldn't do that in reverse, of course, makes no sense. Of course, countries have shifted from one currency to another throughout history. Countries have systems that seemed really written down in stone. I'm thinking, for example, of standard in the 1930s. You know, people made the same arguments about the gold standard that they do now about the euro. And, you know, they said, you know, I mean, that system isn't, you know, it's there to stay. No one's going to be able to ever get off it. And in fact, you know, all the countries got off the gold standard at some point because it simply wasn't working. And some say, you know, it was even one of the causes for the rise of fascism and the Nazis in Germany. So much for us being the fascists. You know, in fact, we're inside a system that by attempting to impose a homogeneous model onto very different countries is really sowing hatred and hostility between countries that we haven't seen in ages. And I think
not a recipe for peace, I recognise.
Yeah, and I think the problem I've always had with this is the feeling that the EU are glorified loan sharks. They give you a massive loan, then if you want to leave, they're going to bite you or ask for the money back, which I think makes the likelihood of particularly the southern member states, such as Italy, being able to leave less and less likely.
That's why it's really so tragic, you know, that we have a political establishment that is completely prone to the European Union. I mean, this is a problem, one of the problems that we have in Italy, but of course it's problems that, you know, they have in France, they have the same problem in Holland. Until very recently, had a similar problem. And so they are binding us more and more to the European Union. But at the end of the day, you can only suffocate, people's will so much. You can only make them endure so much suffering, so much poverty, so much unemployment. When people see they have no prospect for their kids, they don't ask too many questions about technical details. They just want to be free. And they realize that there's simply no future for Italy inside the euro. And really the kind of precondition for being able to even conceive of a future for Italy is to regain our economic and political sovereignty. And
I wanted to ask you, we have you in the UK as the favourites to be the next to leave. We said at the top of the show, 7-2 favourites. Are you worth a few euros on the bet there? Is that true? And how optimistic are you of this political earthquake coming? How optimistic are you that Italy will finally get a referendum to leave the European Union?
Well, referendum isn't really, I think, the way forward for Italy. First of all, referendums on international treaties are not legally binding in Italy. So, it wouldn't really help you politically. They could simply take it and put it in the bin. Now, I think the most important, all the polls say it. People, there's a huge hostility to the European Union, to the euro, between 50-60% of the electorate. It's really huge. And I think it will grow in the coming months when people realize that all these promises of money, free money flowing from the EU, which will end up in their pockets, won't materialize. You will see a spike in that hostility. Now, the problem is that, as you mentioned, in your country and other countries, the mainstream media is completely pro-EU. The major parties, now you have, of course, the current government, which is staunchly pro-EU, and then you have a kind of center-right opposition, which has vented, criticism at the EU over the past few years, but is really kind of backtracking on its EU narrative. We see it, increasingly. We see those parties, such as the Northern League, I think, being increasingly confused in terms of what they want to do with the euro. We've heard Salvini say that the euro is irreversible. We've heard Salvini again say that he wouldn't mind seeing Mario Draghi as, president of the Republic in Italy. So, sending very mixed messages. And I think so people are really starting to feel that there's no major party that says straightforwardly that Italy has to quit the euro. No party, not even the so-called Eurosceptic parties, are saying this. And I think that's why, you know, we've had, I would say, a very positive reception to simply the launch of our party. Italexit was born, was launched in just a few months ago, in the middle of the summer. And initial polls, basically the day after we launched the party, already put us at 5-6% of the vote. And if you consider this is a party I was born the day before, that's huge. And if you consider that a big part of the electorate still doesn't even know about us, and a huge part of that 60% is tired of the euro, doesn't know about us, I think we have a huge potential for growth. And I think, you know, the real appointment for us is the next political elections. And of course, you know, we're not aiming to get into government. We're aiming to get into parliament. We need to put a foot in the system, and we need to get our arguments out there. And I think we need to, that hostility to the EU has to be transformed into hope that an alternative is possible, because that's what is lacking now.
We want democracy to be loved. We want the Western world to fall in love with democracy again.
Absolutely.
You know what would be great, Thomas? You know, Brits love, you know, your gorgeous Italian culture, and we really watched as you were the first hit by Corona, and our hearts went out to you. We have such a friendship between us and all our other guests in their countries. Do you have a message for the British people to encourage us and all our supporters out there to stand in solidarity with you in Italy?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, because if it hadn't been for you, if it hadn't been for Brexit, I think many of us wouldn't even be here. You know, I don't know if we would be here. I think, you know, the UK with Brexit really put history in motion once again. There was this feeling that, okay, yes, the EU isn't working, but it's just bound, you know, this is the world we're stuck with forever. And you proved that anything is possible. There always is an alternative. And so, well, my message would be, don't give up now. You're so close to doing a clean break, which is what you need. And don't give up now, because you've already made history, and you're so close to really changing history, you know, for the best for all of Europe. And so, you know, of course, all our solidarity to you, and, you know, just, you know, keep trying for just a little bit longer. You're almost there. Don't give up now.
Now, Thomas, thank you so much. Didn't I say he'd be a great headline act? You gave a Rod Stewart-like performance there, Thomas. And what's been beautiful about today is this comradeship that we have. Our hands are joined across the waters, across the lands, Holland, France, Italy. So exciting to see new movements springing up.
And positive movements full of hope, and to cherish our nation state and the parliaments that we have, rather than just let them give away power without anyone's consent. I think I just stand with you all, and this has been a great platform to share all our love for the same values. Our European friends, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And it's also been really nice to be talked about in a nice way. Brexiteer. It's like, we're not used to this. We're used to getting moaned at and slagged off. But look, I want to thank everybody's guests today for coming on Brexit Unlocked. You've been magnificent, and it just shows you that there is more that unites us in Europe than divides us, which is the EU. Now, if you've enjoyed today's show, please like, follow, subscribe, spread the message around social media. We're new, we're the new kids on the block, just like Frexit, just like Italexit. We're new, we're energetic, we're positive. We want to change politics and keep going. And above all, on today's show, we want to add all of our energy and our passion into your campaigns on the continent. You're wonderful, wonderful people. Thanks for coming on the show. And everybody out there, thanks for watching this issue of Brexit Unlocked. We'll be back every Friday until the end of the year, keeping the message out there, keeping the pressure up, and making sure that we actually do get Brexit done. Thank you.
Thank you.